Where did you? Anything you want.
See all this? That's the telltale sign this is a really good brim snag, because the brim will eat the shell grit. They take a long time to process it, so when they excrete it, you can see it on top of the logs, and it's a definite telltale sign that it is a good brim log. I'm just about to put on a Scorpion 52 brown trout shallow diver, and the main reason is the water's got a little bit darker up here, so I feel like that more natural colour is going to benefit me a little bit more. And the fish are spooky and holding tight, and with this tannin stained water, I feel like the natural colours is the better way to go. And I'm also using this new fluorocarbon leader, and that tends to help me fish a bit better because it actually sinks rather than mono floats. In the presentation of the lure, it helps it present at an even keel, so when I do pause, which is a critical thing in brim fishing, my lure will rise to the surface a lot slower than a normal mono leader would make it. And since using this new Rio, I've found that it is very nick resistant. Like, you can actually get buried in a snag and get that fish out of there because of how strong this new leader is. I've connected the fluorocarbon with a 9-wrap Albright to this new 2-pound platypus super braid, and the reason behind this is that with the fine diameter of the super braid, I can cast these ultralight lures with quite ease. It seems like these fish are very spooky today. They seem to be quite hugging right in under the shade, so they could be tied into this bank, and if I can get one in there, I feel like I'll be able to pull one out. Touch, touch. Come on. Oh, this is a corker. Yeah, tight in the shade. Oh, that's not a bad fish. You can see where he's been hit here, Ben. Bit of red blood, scale damage. You can see where these sharp teeth, he'll actually lose these later on and grind them down when he goes down the river and eats a bit harder like shell and all the rest of it. Like the real big ones, the 40-centimetre ones, they've got real grinders. Release this baby. You watch him go in a second. That was just beautiful.
What I'm doing is using the electric motor here to push us forward, push us backwards, hold us off the snags without making any noise and spooking the fish. It's really important to be as quiet as you can be when you're doing this style of fishing. You've got adjustable speed, variable speed on it, so you can just sneak along on calm days, or if you've got really strong winds and you need to make really quick evasive movements, then you can put it on 10 and you can just about ski behind 10. See the pink line, the other thing that I'm using here is a little bit different coloured line. Bright, personally I like a little bit brighter lines, so it gives us angler awareness, it increases angler awareness. You can see where your line is all the time, and as you can see coming down the side of that log there, I could tell where my braid was. With some of the darker coloured lines, it's very hard to estimate where your lure is, so especially in windy conditions like this, around snags is where it comes into its own. Another important thing to remember with fish in lure casting situations is not to get too close. That's where the ability to be able to cast accurately at reasonable distances comes into its own. Once you start to get in close on top of the fish, you can cast a shadow over the top of the snags, and even close range, even if you're not actually over the top of the fish, close range shadows can shut them down as well. This log just here, we can cast a lure along the side of it, which means that we can work the full length of the structure, and if there's a fish there, and we can flick him out like that, up the side of it, all you're trying to do with your hand, your index finger in particular, is just lay it up the side of the rod and just give your lure some nice crisp little movements. Just twitches and jiggles with the rod tip like that. Sometimes on days like this, you need to be able to get the lure down where you can't actually see it, just where it's out of sight. And that it gives the brim an opportunity to sort of be less spooked, and feel a little bit less vulnerable by coming up and exposing themselves up near the surface. We were watching a big osprey there before, swim along with about a pound brim in his talons, so their main predator hunts from above. The deeper they stay down, the less easy target they are. Element of surprise, right on that shadow line. You can hover it on that shadow line. You'll never see the fish sitting down under it, but if you can hover it right above where that shadow line is, quite often the first thing you'll see of the fish is when they dart out and grab your lure. Yeah, we got him exactly where we said he'd be, right on the edge of that shadow, right next to the log. So, plans coming together. Yep. Look at that. Some pretty fish. We're seeing a hell of a lot of fish in here. You're actually working your lure around the structure and we're seeing flashes, and you need a set of polarised sunglasses to do this sort of thing. It takes the glare off the water. In water like this where you've got stain or suspended sediment, the same as fresh water, in impoundments and rivers and things like that, wherever there's browny tinges to the water, that rose or amber or brown coloured lens is made for it. These ones are called Mako Adventurers. They've got a pretty big lens on them because I've got a buff head, need to cover my eyes.
You notice we're going through this 2.5 metre section here, dropping down to 4. It drops straight into a 12 metre hole that seems to hold quite a fair few fish, and then we'll pop straight out of that 12 metre hole up a rocky ridge back into 2 metres. As we go through, you'll notice snags that are 2 or 3 metres deep that hold fish. When we are going through, the number pops up near the fish to tell you the depth of fish. So you can be in a 12 metre hole and then you'll see your fish symbols come up and a number comes next to them, which will clarify what depth your fish are sitting at. I haven't seen that on that feature on another sounder before.
Brim have been eating the back end of this lure, and you can tell by all the bite marks on the back. He's been hooked perfectly with this chemically sharpened mustad, and I'll just slip that out and he'll be ready for release. Get another one.
A spoon with a treble in the back.
2 fish, 2 casts. This one was fighting with a bigger one for the lure, and this one won. So I'll let him go and we'll see if we can get 3 in a row.
Spots like we're looking at here, a prime piece of structure, big horizontal timber and shady pockets. Larger fish will sit tight in against the bank under the structure. You need to put your lure right in there. If you put it right on the money, you'll find that what happens is they'll come out and they'll, oh, there's a tap. Oh, yeah.
It come straight out.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah, I think you'd had me in trouble otherwise. He come out. Hey.
Yeah, good fish, mate. Lovely.
Marvellous hooks.
Brown trout happening here.
Yeah, brown trout again. That's been killing them, hasn't it? Love the colour in these things. Beautiful.
As you can see, we've changed the hardware around on this Scorpion 52 a little bit. We've actually taken the front hook off. One of the reasons for that is so we can drag it through the timber without getting snagged as often. You can see from where the paint's been lost after catching at least 35 brim in the last 2 sessions that most of the hits have been on the back end anyway, so this little hook's been doing all the work. These are not just the normal mustads. This is a mustad needle point. It's actually a chemically sharpened hook, and when it's new, it's bright red. That hook has been nothing short of sensational. It's caught a lot of fish. It's still strong, it's still sharp, it's got very small barbs for easy penetration. And for those of you who don't squash your barbs down, it's very easy to pull out of a fish as well. It's been a fantastic hook, and I'll certainly be using a lot more of them.
I'm on. Yeah, mate. He followed me, followed me, followed me. Just changed to deep diving crawfish like my partner down the back bend. I think that since the sun has gone to high in the sky midday, I think the brim are holding a little bit lower, and that is proved to be correct, because this was only about my second cast of this deep diving crawfish. Look at all his green hues up around his gill rakers and that. Beautiful looking fish, absolute prime nick, about 38 centimetres. Put him back and see if we can go and catch another one.
I know the way that you can cast these real small lures accurately, especially when there's a bit of breeze around like there is at the moment, is that if you can put your index finger underneath the bail arm like that, pull your bail arm back, and now I'm actually trapping the line between the finger and the spool, so I can gauge how much line comes off the reel. So what we do is you look straight down the rod, use a nice, see the little tip on this one, flexible tip rod. You can actually use the weight of the lure to build up power in the rod and throw the lure for you. So your index finger under there, thumb goes up the backbone of the rod, look straight down the rod, load it and fire it. Then all you do is just a couple of sweeps of the rod tip, a couple of twitches, let it hover. Work your lure very slowly like that. Once you're out of the strike zone, if you're in dead water coming over a sandy patch or something like that, you can speed the retrieve up, make the most of your retrieve. So cast in there your first 10 or 15 feet, work that really thoroughly, and then speed it up and get it back in the snag again. That's actually, that snag's got everything you could ever ask for. Big horizontal snags, like logs. It's got shade over the top of it, and it's got that spindly stuff as well. Another cast you can do if you've got overhanging trees, when we're talking about the lure, the weight of the lure building up power in the rod tip, that's why we accelerate over fast so top. You'll notice that when we cast, we accelerate forward really fast. That's to build up power in the rod tip as we accelerate forward. Obviously you can't get the same amount of trajectory when you're in the boat with another guy, because you can end up hooking your mate in the leg or something like that. So tuck your elbow up, come back really fast, rotate your rod tip, and load it like that.
That fired it, isn't it?
It does. It's really low, flat trajectory cast. It's great for getting like underneath overhanging structure. Yes. See the flash in there, Mike?
Mate, yes. Quick and the dead.
Yeah. No. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Come up.
Nice fish. There he is.
He's not bad. Jeez, I thought he had me in the sticks there for a second.
Nice little fish there. Well done, mate.
Come here.
Oh, comfort lift.
Yeah. Beautiful little fish. Even those little fellas like that, they give it to you in the sticks, don't they?
They can, yeah. Little Laser Pro 45, mate. Nice
Yeah.
fish, eh?
They're a pearler, aren't they? This
Yeah.
gold's working today.
Yeah. See if there's any more in there, eh?
You have a cast there, mate. I'll get the pliers and get the hook out of this one. There's heaps of fish flashing in that snag.
Yep. Okay.
Just don't take advantage
Take
of
your
me
time,
being out
mate.
of
Take your
action.
time.
Yeah,
No, don't
I
hurry.
knew
Don't Mate, if we just back out of here a little, I reckon we can get one of these.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I'll back her up.
Yep.
You get him
And
out?
around the tree.
You get him out?
I don't know.
Into him. Hang on, I'll take you around the other side of that snag.
I think you might have to.
Get into him.
He's got me. Hope he doesn't get around those barnacles. Here we go.
Oh, he's out, he's out.
You beauty. Oh, he's not bad either.
No, he's a good fish.
Ooh, he just puffed himself a bit in that snag, thank goodness.
He had you in you 2 or 3 times.
He
Bring him in here. Come here.
Oh, nice solid.
don't spoil
Nice solid fish.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, thanks, Hodgie.
Mate,
Thanks, mate.
good fish.
Beautiful. Thanks, mate.
Congratulations,
Good on you,
excellent.
buddy.
He's best one of the morning. Oh, gee, I tell you, you're lucky, mate. That hooks up straight.
Oh, have a look at that, yeah.
Righto.
He must have had one hook in the snag and one hook in himself, I think, to straighten it like that.
He's one of the best ones out of snag so far.
Mate, he is, isn't he? He's a nice fish.
Beautiful.
It's real heart in the mouth stuff when you get that sort of thing, mate. You know, you can see him wrap around the snag and you see him flashing away and you can't move him. Very good.
It started off as a timber town. There's a population of about 500 people here. Increases over the holiday season with the tourist makers. The estuary is the only natural opening estuary to the Southern Ocean here, which makes it a unique system down here. The rest of them close annually with their rainfall, but because our rainfall is so huge, we have a permanent opening estuary. The vegetation, it actually got classed as a national park over 100 years ago, so not a hell of a lot has changed to the eye. We have predominant carrying tingle trees. Tingle is only unique to this one area. We also have the world famous treetop walk over the Franklin River. This is a 45 metre high walking platform. You're actually up there in the canopy of these magnificent giant carry trees. We have 3 rivers coming into the system. We have the Walpole River into the Little Walpole Estuary, and then we have the Deep and the Franklin rivers. The Franklin is our dominant river, which stretches all the way up to Cranbrook, and the Deep River is being classed as the cleanest, most pristine river in the whole South Coast. We have many walkways going around the estuary. On the western side of the estuary, we absolutely have wilderness, which means there's no cars, there's only foot access, which lets everybody think they're back to nature. This is Circus Beach, fellas. What I was telling you about, absolutely seclusion.
Unreal.
Salmon go off around Easter time, Hodgie.
Check out the depth of the gutters.
So we make it a date, buddy?
Yeah, you're on.
Cool as chops, eh? What do you reckon? We'll go and target the flats and get some bream.
Yeah, you're on. Yeah, let's go.
Every year, November, December, depends on our rainfall during the winter, the bream will congregate in an area, usually in a very deep hole, which this year they congregated in what we call Cronshaw's Corner, 10 metre hole. It all depends on temperature and salinity, and they will congregate from anywhere between 17 to 23 degrees, which depends on our rainfall and how warm the days we've been getting. And when they do congregate, they will congregate in their thousands and thousands. I'll go over that area with my sounder and I'll pick up huge schools of bream, and they'll tend to stay there for 20 to 28 days depending on what the season's like. And not very often will it happen in the same location every year, because that tends to be with the salt content. When I go and fish the spawning fish, I never keep fish when I'm fishing the spawn, because I feel like if you can throw them back during those 20-25 days, you're preserving the stocks. You'll notice I'm running the Poltergeist 50 on my offside bank rod. And what that does is the Poltergeist will dive to 3.2 metres. So when it is on the off-bank rod, I'll look at my sounder, look at the depth, run in about 2.5 metres. So my off rod will be running in 3.5 metres. So I'm keeping this lure close to the bottom, which is an absolute must for bream trolling. The big huge spoon bib gets it down straight away, and this colour tends to work really well down here. This is R11. Ben is running a 52 deep diving Scorpion because it dives to 1.8. I'll run that on the bank rod, and it just covers both options when you're trolling. You don't want to be out here as we are today using battery power, or if you have got an outboard using petrol for nothing. So if you can bring everything together, you will catch good fish in Walpole. I tend to run it about 30 metres behind the boat, and the biggest thing there is the boat spooks them a little bit, and if I can run it at 30 metres behind the boat, they tend to aren't getting spooked by the boat, with the dead slow troll, we should be right back into it, mate. When I do come and troll for bream, I'll visually look for the drop-off bend, and once I find them visually, I'll use my sounder. I'll actually mark fish as I'm going along, which means I'll see fish on my sounder, and 3 or 4 seconds later, when I think that they'll be back there at the 30-yard mark where my lures are sitting, so many times